seeing the child instead of being the child. That's the first most powerful step.
Welcome to the Write the Book Inside You podcast. I'm your host, Caryl Westmore, where we dive into all things about writing your book. One of my favorite sayings is, make love, not war, to the writer within. That's a particularly apt way of looking at ourselves as creatives. Today, my guest is Niko Ana Jeanne, author of Healing the Inner Child with EFT Tapping, which is about connecting with that part of us that has been kept from being our best selves. Niko is leading what she calls an inner child revolution, blending EFT tapping with conscious reparenting, helping people heal childhood wounds, regulate their nervous system, and rewire the neural pathways that can hijack us from living our best life and being our best creative. Welcome, Niko, and tell us about how you came to write your book on EFT tapping and the inner child.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I really appreciate it. And thank you for having me. The short story of how I came to write the book is a culmination of my personal experiences in my healing journey. Having worked with many private clients, one-to-one groups, and training EFT students, I realized that if I wanted to share something that profoundly changed my life and the lives of people I've been working with on a larger scale, that I was going to have to do the work it takes to put it in a format that would be easy for a large number of people to access quickly.
Yes. And so when they read your book, it gives them the whole idea of how you would work with them, correct? As a coach and healer.
Yeah, I mean, it essentially gives a blueprint for how to approach your own self-healing. It gives the blueprint for how to do that on your own in a way that's easy to comprehend, easy to apply. I do go into the steps. It's truly a step-by-step method that a person could do on their own. That doesn't mean you can't still get support on the journey, of course. But yes, I do go into a step-by-step method.
And we're going to talk about that today. One of my favorite quotes to mention in the book is by the father or the grandfather of inner child work, John Bradshaw. And he said, the child you once were is still living inside you, waiting for your love to free them. Can you expand on that and how his origination of the word inner child has affected your work?
Absolutely. That is a wonderful quote because it's so true. I mean, I've had the incredible privilege of being able to be mentored and work with some really highly skilled and talented, gifted therapists and coaches. And of course, John Bradshaw is, like you say, grandfather of the work in psychology. What I learned that I think was the most profound thing that anyone could take away from this, from my own mentor, Patrick Tian, and he talked about how the inner child lives in the body. And this is what John Bradshaw also talked about. So the inner child lives somatically in the body. And you could say the inner child is the nervous system. The things we experienced in the past as children live in our nervous system as unresolved patterns. And when we don't realize it, most of us don't realize it, is that we're constantly being, the word is triggered, or we're responding or reacting to the present moment from the inner child's perspective of the past. It shows up in the body as nervous system activations, panic, anxiety, or fear, or anger. And typically it's an overreaction to what's actually going on in the present. And this is one of the most powerful understandings of it, because once you realize that, then you can start to get what's called in psychology the subject-object shift, seeing the child instead of being the child. That's the first most powerful step.
And can you give us an example from your case studies, perhaps even ones you mentioned in the book, of how someone would come to you not realizing they've been triggered by their inner child, but maybe they come for coaching for something else?
They may come to me, and they've got a problem or a goal. Once you work with them, I would specifically work with people using emotional freedom technique, tapping, to help them stabilize their nervous system. As you know, one of the biggest benefits of tapping is to calm the nervous system. Once the nervous system becomes calm and the brain is able to work from the prefrontal cortex, meaning we're able to access problem solving, we can be more creative, we're more in panic, our amygdala is taking us over and we're in flight, fight, freeze, fawn, all those responses. So you cannot connect with your inner child well unless you have your inner adult online, meaning your nervous system is regulated and you can approach your inner child from that place. That's the beauty of blending EFT, one of the many tools that can help you regulate your nervous system. But for me, it saved my life because I used to have a panic disorder that was untreatable by any other means.
And that brings me to the question of your origin story. Was that where you first sought help? Tell us about that. Could you go back to something you have talked about, narcissistic trauma as a child? I don't know if you say you're moving away from now, but was that part of your origin story?
Yeah, so it's funny because that's not why I started using tapping. At the time that I became aware of tapping, I had done a lot of inner work and I was just still dealing with managing a panic disorder and having anxiety attacks constantly. And what happened was I'd been to therapists. I tried everything under the sun. It was better, but still, I still felt stalked by the possible panic attack that could come at any time for no reason and was uncontrollable. Once I started using tapping, I came upon it accidentally through a video with Nick Ortner from the Tapping Solution. I started tapping in a video and I had this profound experience where I just had an emotional release. I started crying while I was tapping, but I felt this incredible relief. So that led me to explore tapping on my own to release anxiety. I was already coaching and I had a life coaching business, but I found that if I was using tapping with my clients, they were getting much faster results. I ended up pursuing EFT certification because I wanted to add that to my life coaching business. It wasn't until 2020, right before COVID, that I ended up going on a path and discovering that I was experiencing a specific kind of trauma called narcissistic trauma. I had already been doing work with EFT, but what happened was I found on YouTube Patrick Tian's channel. He's a very popular therapist that educates people on reparenting the inner child. I had the incredible blessing to work with him as a therapist. He doesn't take clients anymore, but at the time he did. So I got to work with him directly and learned how to reparent my inner child. Even though he didn't use tapping, I used tapping while doing this work.
So that's interesting because in the book, I noticed you talk about the non-dominant handwriting, which I learned in the 80s from Lucia Cappuccioni. Was he the mentor who first introduced you to it? And tell us about that as a way to connect and speak to our inner child if we've never done any of this work before.
Yeah, so that is what he had me do in sessions. Take a pen and dominant, non-dominant hand journaling. Dominant hand for adult self, non-dominant hand for child.
Yeah, just explain that step by step. So you take a piece of paper and you take, say, a crayon or a pen, and just tell us how it works. So your dominant hand is your adult self, right? You explain. And you ask a question. So explain how this works to connect with your child.
So you can use dominant, non-dominant hand journaling. You use your dominant hand to write. That dominant hand is the adult self speaking to the inner child. The non-dominant hand represents the child part, which expresses or responds to the dominant hand. And this actually uses, when you switch hands, it uses a different part of the brain. So you really bypass a lot of resistance that could come up. And it does create a separation, and it also is somatic because writing is somatic. It makes it more powerful than just copying in your head.
Yes.
But what I also added myself was, while tapping, you can tap on the side of the hand point, tapping with your dominant hand, or switching and tapping with your non-dominant hand. I added that in because it felt natural to me. If I wanted to connect with my inner child in dialogue, say out loud, or even in my own head, or as a way to work with clients, I developed that as a technique to help clients dialogue with their inner child while I was guiding them. It works the same way because it's somatic, right? It's tapping side of the hand point.
I like that way. You don't have to sit down with a pen. I did this for years with my journaling when I discovered it with Capaccione's books, Power of the Other Hand. But I like that you also bring in tapping and saying that's an answer from my inner child, what she would want to say to me, correct? And then I would ask her what's bothering her. Is it like that?
It's exactly like that. It's like any relationship where you're connecting, you're saying, look, I see you. I notice that you are feeling upset and, I want to know more. Can you tell me, how are you feeling? I'm here for you. And then you switch and you wait for the response. You don't assume, or because that's the thing about it, is surprising and powerful what you may get if you actually wait for the child part to express or answer. The process that I explain in the book is very simple. You always approach your inner child with empathy, unconditional support and love, validation, as in absolutely makes sense you feel that way, because all feelings should be accepted and encouraged. So that's the first step. And once you get that rapport going, you don't try to change the inner child's feelings or how they're perceiving it. You just validate and you say, of course you feel that way. And you offer protection and support and safety.
Yes.
Before you try to do any work around changing their perception of what's happening.
Exactly. I think you talk about the 4 pillars of nurturing communication in your book for children: safety, validation, acceptance, and presence. I'd like you to expand a bit on the tone and the attitude you need, that calmness, that gentleness. If you've been triggered, you may not have immediately. So would you say you've got to bring down your present day self to knowing that perhaps this is to do with your inner child feeling unsafe? So you first have to regulate. Could you explain that, how that would work? Give us a case study, an example of someone who came to you, not high on the scale of 1 to 10, about something she didn't realize. Tell us how you would have worked with her.
Yeah. So, of all the clients I've worked with, there's a lot of commonalities. I could take different case studies and create, an avatar of a client that would come to me, typically because I work with a lot of coaches. Pain points and challenges are getting stuck in their business, being visible, making their offers, putting themselves out there, setting boundaries with clients. So typically a client would come to me and say something like, I really want to have this coaching business and I have this income goal, but I want to be able to get clients. But as soon as I want to go talk to someone about my services, I just shut down and I can't reach out. I get on sales calls or discovery calls and I get scared. This is a really common thing that can come up for coaches. So what happens is when I work with them one-on-one, we identify exactly the moment where they're feeling the anxiety come up. What happens in the body is the indication that the inner child has taken them over. I'm overwhelmed. I'm scared. The inner child has taken over the interaction. The inner child's driving the bus. The inner child's running the business. And what we do is we work to get the client to see the child instead of be the child. We tap to get the nervous system regulated first. And then we go into a dialogue. And the easiest way to get to it is to use the present moment trigger. I got an email from a potential client. They want to get on a call with me, and now I'm totally freaked out. So we dialogue with the child part about that. It would be like, so I know you're feeling really scared when we got this email that we might be getting on the call with them. And I'm wondering, can you tell me more about that? How are you feeling? switch and wait for the part to express. So typically the part's going to express, it's going to say something like, I'm scared. I don't want to do that. What if they get mad at me? What if I can't handle it? So that's an example of how we use the present moment trigger to work with the child. You have to find out what it is that they're being triggered about. Eventually, what you do is you find out where this is coming from in the past. Well, of course you're scared because when you were a kid, you had to manage all the adults' emotions around you. That wasn't your job, and you didn't know how to do that, and you didn't know how to set boundaries. So of course you're scared to get on a call with someone.
Let the child tell you what it is that scares her.
Yes, absolutely. That's the whole beauty of separating out the adult from the child part. The adult self is dialoguing with the inner child, and you switch, whether it's writing or tapping. You always switch the parts. It's a conversation that goes back and forth. Like you're having a conversation with a real person. It's no different than that.
So then that person would calm down and realize that every time she goes into this fear, it could be, if she's curious, to do with that child, until you bring that child to a point where they feel safe to speak up.
Yes. And the resolution of it is to offer protection from whatever they fear, or to take back the responsibility of the adult relationship, which that's what it would be between you and your client. That's an adult relationship. The inner child has no business trying to get involved in that, and they need to go be a child, and the adult needs to handle the adult relationship. So there's a process in which you bring the child into the present moment with you and say, look, I got this. You don't have to worry about it. I can handle it. And you take that back from them. They feel relieved. Then you can know that you're approaching your relationships, interactions, business, and your life from the adult place.
And so you reach a point after a lot of people say, well, how much work must I do on myself before my child is free? What would you say to that?
I'd say that's not the best question. It's not the most empowering question, because the fact that indicates that there's some parameters around, I'm trying to get to a destination, whereas this work, it's the journey that bears fruit. So I think a better question to ask is just, how can I continue to reap the benefits in every day of continuing to have this relationship with my inner child? Because healing isn't a linear process. People ask me that all the time, but I can't tell.
That's a very common thing. Well, I asked that question and on the work I was doing for several years before tapping, when I was working with my inner child. One day I started to paint and do things that's my creative inner child. And that's why I talk about the inner game of writing. And it's not always a child, but can be a professor who told the adult self that you're not a good writer. You're never going to make money writing children's books, as one of my clients experienced. But if you track it back, it is often before the age of 6 that something happened and a belief is set up. I think you talk about the self-identity that you have to release that may have come from the past and what people said and did.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I was working with someone one-on-one and using EFT, you go into past events in EFT, you can find where the professor told you that. You can work on more recent events easier than long in the past. Use that event as a way to repair it in the moment. Bring the charge off the event with a technique, an EFT technique like tell the story or something. But then you can actually reparent in the memory and change what happened. Go in as your adult self and then come to the either younger self or child's rescue and tell the professor off or whatever needs to happen and change what happens, which actually changes the present moment. Because if you formed an identity in that moment where the professor told you, you're never going to do that, and then you think, oh boy, and you create a belief in that moment that you're carrying forward, you can change that by going back to the past and changing the memory.
Yeah, so talk about that. As you probably know, we use matrix reimprinting.
Yes.
Tell us about memory consolidation and how you approach it in your work.
Yeah, and I realized that matrix reparenting, it's a similar technique. My own approach is simply that I discovered that if we apply reparenting in a memory, then based on quantum physics, we can literally, by observing a different outcome in the past,
Yeah,
through
yeah.
quantum physics, we're actually collapsing a new possible. So the present moment is based on what we're observing in the past, right?
Yes,
Quantum
exactly.
physics. That also changes the future. So if we can reparent ourselves, not just in the moments around something's happening in the present, but literally the past events change the past, then
Mhm.
literally changes the present, which is the future.
Tell us about the future aspect of your work.
Yeah, well, I do have a strategic partnership. It's in my private work that I do with people. It's called Future Self Mastery,
Mm.
and it is based on quantum principles. The quantum realm says that every version of you, every version of your life that's possible exists in the field all at once. So if you want to be someone who can be, do, and have what you want, you have to tune into the frequency of that version of you that actually already exists, or figure out how to be that person. But literally, that future self exists in the field. You tune into that future version of you. And by doing so, you're collapsing the gap between where you are in time and where
Mhm.
they are in time. And you collapse and you start taking their consciousness and hearing their thoughts and getting ideas from them. And that literally allows you to step into that version of you
Mhm.
now.
Yeah,
But I'll tell you
exactly.
that the inner child work is really foundational for that.
Exactly. That's what I'm hearing, that it can become exciting when you clear the trauma capsules that have been stuck in beliefs and programming. And then, do you call it the magical child? What do you call the child who's free and who's creative?
What
What's the name you give her?
the way I see the magical child, everyone's got a different perspective. The magical child is not an actual child, but a representation of source energy being expressed,
Mm.
completely unlimited, completely free of trauma. It's the pure essence of being represented by this child that has never been touched by harm or trauma in this world.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Once you are in that frequency, then the future self, dreams and mastery can become much easier, correct?
That's the way I see it, because I feel like as long as we're held in a pattern of identity based on the beliefs we created from the past, it's difficult to tune into anything different. It's a shift in consciousness, which happens naturally from doing a lot of deep work and stabilizing your nervous system. That's what I've experienced.
And Niko, for someone who knows they have old emotional patterns but feel intimidated, what's the gentlest first step you'd suggest?
Yeah, so in my book, I talk about that the first step is to learn the EFT tapping and to stabilize your adult self first before trying to connect with the inner child. In the book, I explain how EFT works, the science behind it, and the simple steps of using EFT to calm your nervous system, address fears that might be coming up, and to feel really stable and coherent in your own self.
Yeah, so the steps are in there, and they could read the book and start or reach out to you, watch the webinar you offer through the book. Is that right?
Yeah, I do have reference to it's a master class, a free master class, and it is called the 4-step method to breaking toxic cycles and becoming the coach you're meant to be. The master class is for coaches who
Okay.
feel really stuck in toxic patterns in their life.
So when we ask how can people get hold of you, and I'll put it in the show notes, would you say go to your website and tune into that webinar?
Yes, my website, which is just Niko, has everything that I offer, the book, the master class, and all the other pathways to work with me.
Right now, I think we're coming to an end of our interviews. There's something that I haven't asked you. What I wanted to talk to you about was the process of writing the book inside you. How long did it take you to write the book? What were the challenges, etc.?
Yeah, so I would say that once I made the decision to create the outline, it took about 7 months to get to where the manuscript was ready to publish. But I have to say that before that, I spent several years thinking about writing it and never actually writing it.
Yes. And what I really like that with the clarity of the two streams in the book. One is the brain, the neural pathways, and the other is the reparenting. I think you said the energy psychology part and the scientific kind of neuroscience part. Is that correct? You explained that without making it too scientific.
I feel like it's important to understand that, and you don't have to have a deep understanding of it for it to be impactful. But I did want people to understand that it's not just woo-woo mystical stuff, because if you don't need science, and to me, it's all about if it works, then you don't have to know how it works. But I think it is empowering to understand that we can look with science and understand why these things work.
Yes, which we, in the beginning, many years ago, when many of us started out, we didn't have that evidential proof that more and more have now. I honor you for writing your book, Healing the Inner Child with You Tapping, and bringing together so much information and empathy to writing it for people who may be stuck in their lives and not connected with their inner child.
Yes, thank you. And like I said, it took a while, and I will just say that my inner child got very triggered while I was writing the book.
So really, that's what I wondered.
I had to do a lot of work with her to get us through the book. I had a lot to do with owning the method and putting it out there for people to read. That part was challenging, but we did get through it, and through the tools and the techniques, the book's published. So that's proof.
You announced it.
It hit the bestseller list a couple days after I published it, which was, I had no idea that was going to happen.
What's the response been from your followers, your tribe?
I have gotten a lot of great feedback. I'm getting some reviews coming in on Amazon, which, as you know, can be a little difficult to get, but just people reaching out to me, email or on Facebook, and saying, I'm really enjoying this book. This is amazing. This is incredible. And that's great to get that feedback.
So I'm going to ask you a final question. If you could speak directly to someone who's listening, to their inner child right now, what would you want to say? What would you want them to hear?
I would say don't overcomplicate it. Just show up and be there for your inner child and offer your unconditional love and support, and the rest will follow. Just show up for your inner child. Start right now. Don't wait.
Beautiful. Thank you. So there you have it. Keep in mind John Bradshaw's famous quote, "The child you once were is still living inside you, waiting for your love to free them." Hopefully today's interview has given you the first steps to doing that, and you will buy the book and apply them going forward.